Hey, thanks for joining with us today. I'm Lou Sloger, and this is 1136 Ministries. Um, as always, I want to give thanks to the Lord for his kindness, for his goodness, for his mercies, and thank all of you for helping us build this ministry, this podcast, and then the endeavors that we're engaged in. Took my first visit to the jail in a long time this past Sunday and preached to some of those guys down there. I'll share about that in a little bit, but I'm just very, very thankful for the privilege of knowing who Jesus is and then seeking to live a life that's pleasing to him, beneficial to souls. And at the end of the day, I hope and I pray that all those who have stopped by and have ever listened, my friends and family will all just know who he is and wake up in heaven someday, and we will rejoice around that throne. So let me read to you a verse from Mark 9. And there's a few others that we'll look at, but I'm just going to start with one and then tell you what happened, a couple different stories that happened this week. And hopefully, again, as always, I hope you'll be encouraged. But this is Mark 9:41. And Jesus said, "For whoever gives you a cup of water to drink because of your name as followers of Christ, truly I say to you, he will not lose his reward." It seems to be a pretty simple thing, just to give somebody a cup of water. And the motivation is he's saying he's given this water because of your name as a follower of Christ. So there's in Galatians, Paul says that we want to do good to all men, especially those for the household of faith. Because we're not God and because we have limited resources, we recognize that we cannot help everybody all the time. And sometimes we have to make choices of who we help and when we help and how we help, what we give to, how we serve. And the priority should always be God, his cause, his purpose, and his people, and then as many people as possible along the way. This past week, I had to swing by the bank and going to use the ATM, get some cash. And there was an older couple ahead of me, and they had done the ATM stuff, and they had pulled up ahead to get past the machine, but not far enough ahead where I could pull in behind him and then do my business. And both doors are open on the driver's and passenger side, and they were just two older folks, and they were kind of wobbling around, and I could tell they were looking for something. So I rolled down my window and I go, "Hey, what are you looking for?" And he said, "A $20 bill." And they were just, walking around, and they kind of looked around, and they looked at me, and they looked around, they looked at me, and then they finally just got back in their car, and they pulled up enough where I could, do my thing. And then they were sitting in the car, and the driver, the husband, got out again and looked around, and he was so flustered and so discouraged. So I did my transaction, and they were pulling around to go out of the parking lot. And I pulled up after I did my transaction. I stopped and I just jumped out to do a quick look, and sure enough, there was a $20 bill laying on the ground. So I grabbed it, and then I had to, hunt them down, kept honking, and they finally stopped. Right before they pulled out of the parking lot, they stopped. And I waved it to them, and you'd have thought we found the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. They were overjoyed. They thanked me profusely. And there was a part of me that said, "Gosh, it was just $20. But you realize that everybody's at a different phase of life, view things differently. But obviously that $20 was a big deal to them. And they had gone from being really discouraged and really frustrated. And I'm sure the husband felt bad because he was the one doing the transaction and the money just blew out of his hand. And when I gave it to him, it made my day, making their day. And then I think of a verse like this. Listen, not even a cup of water given in his name will go without its reward. And there's always things that we should be trying to do. But part of it is this. I could have pulled up behind him and been irritated, like, "You're in my way, get out of my way." I could have honked. I could have said, "Move ahead." But I asked him, "What are you looking for?" Right? And trust me when I tell you, I'm not a good driver. People who don't go when the light turns green and they don't use a blinker. And we all get a little irritated by that, right? But God gave me grace that particular day. And I think because of them, as much as anything, I just kind of patiently waited and let them pull up. And I could have blown the whole time if I was just worried about me. Honk and get out of my way. I'm most important thing here. And so just to let them look, to be patient, and then to look for them. And by God's grace, there it was, just lying right there in the drive. And then to give it to them, it was just amazing just to make their day. And then this, like I said, this past Sunday, I went to the jail. And I had done Bible studies at the jail with juvenile delinquents probably 45 years ago. And so I told them the story when I first went to the jail, and they were like, wow, this guy's been here and gone and back. And then I told them why I'm there. And it was another one of those little aha moments, right? Too many of us as Christians lose sight of the fact that all of us, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way. We've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And after I was done, I asked them if they wanted any prayer. And sadly, I don't know how many guys were there, but I asked them if any of them would be able to be home for Christmas. And there may have been one or two, but when I asked them, how many of you are going to be here for Christmas instead of home, almost every hand went up. And then I asked them if they wanted to pray about anything. And this guy came up, his name was Michael, and he said, hey, I need to pray for my court date. And I said, what are you in for? And he goes, I got a DUI. And then he said, it's my 6th one. And I go, man, if you quit drinking, you won't get no DUIs. He goes, I know, man, I know. And then again, it's one of those aha moments when you realize that he who sins is a slave to sin. But once you know the truth will set you free. And if the Son shall set you free, you'll be free indeed. And the only thing that really made a difference between his 6 DUIs and me being sober was the grace of God. 1 Corinthians 15, Paul said, I am what I am by the grace of God. So when we find ourselves with, on the one hand, if I'd have lost $20, I'd have been a little frustrated and kicking myself, but I don't think it would have ruined my whole day. For that elderly couple, it was going to ruin their whole day. Being in the jail, I recognized, you know what? The only difference between me and him is the grace of God. And so when we find ourselves in situations where we're thankful or we're appreciative, we need to remind ourselves to God's grace and his grace alone. Psalm 115 says, not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but to thy name give glory, because of thy loving kindness and because of thy truth. Now, here once again, it's just kind of an amazing thing. The reason I was able to be kind and patient with that elderly couple was the grace of God. The reason why I was able to be sympathetic and try to be an encouragement to that inmate was the grace of God. So I've earned nothing. I've merited nothing. I am what I am by the grace of God. However, this is how wonderful grace really is. Jesus said, if you give a cup of water in my name, it'll get rewarded. But you realize this, right? You wouldn't give that cup of water. You wouldn't do anything that's worthy of being rewarded if it wasn't for the grace of God. So you're doing it by the grace of God, and then you get rewarded for what you could never do outside the grace of God, but grace rewards you anyway. Grace rewards you like you did it on your own, even though you didn't. That's how gracious God really is. He gives us grace to perform good deeds, and then he rewards us for the good deeds that only his grace could equip us to do. I think that's why John Newton wrote Amazing Grace. It's just amazing. It saves a wretch like us. It equips wretches like us, and then it rewards wretches like us. It's really quite amazing, right? So here's what I want to encourage you to do. Every morning, every moment of the day, right? Beg God for grace. As you start to get out of bed in the morning, ask him for grace. As you're leaving for school or work, ask him for grace. As you're just starting your day, Ask him for grace. And then ask him for the grace that you need in those moments of time, whether it's in a jail cell or at an ATM or a grocery store line or wherever you find yourself. Be alert, be aware. There are lost people, there are needy people, there are wounded people, there are people who need encouragement and just want to know somebody cares about them. You can make somebody's day if you're alert and aware of what's going on, and then you cultivate the grace of God to put those good works into practice. All right. So I hope that you can be strengthened and encouraged just to do as much good by God's grace along the way as you can. Let me read you the next verse in Mark 9. Jesus said, I truly say to you, he will not lose his reward. Then he says this, whoever causes one of these little ones who believe to stumble, it would be better for him if with a heavy millstone hung around his neck, he be cast into the sea. So talk about from one extreme to the other. If you just do a little good, he'll take notice and he'll reward you. But if you do harm, he'll take notice and they might come back to haunt you. And here, I just think it's the world in which we live. We live in a world where, because of social media and just being able to post stuff anonymously and say mean, nasty things, we don't appreciate how hurtful some things are. So I want to encourage you to do as much good as you can. And then I want to encourage you, by God's grace, speak kindly to people. Listen to what this says in Proverbs 12, 18. Listen. There is one who speaks rashly like the thrust of a sword. Proverbs 18 says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. And James says, with the same mouth, we bless God and we curse those who are made in his image. And then he states the obvious, does he not? My brethren, these things ought not to be this way. And it's amazing to me, once again, if we're just paying attention and we're prayerfully trying to cultivate grace, you can do these little things along the way that might completely radically change somebody's day, their perspective, and maybe their whole life, just by being kind or having a kind word to say or showing some support and encouragement. And then to recognize that, listen, 1 Corinthians 15:58, right? Therefore, my beloved, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor in the Lord is never in vain. Not even that cup of water will go without its reward. And sadly, once again, though, it's just so easy to flip that coin and say how easy it is to be rude, to be impatient, to be biting with our tongue, to be slanderous and to be gossips, and to then to do so, in some cases, claiming to be the superior Christian. I want to read you a verse that, again, there's just so many things where you pause and consider them. They're kind of scary. This is John 16, and Jesus said, these things I have spoken to you, that you may be kept from stumbling. They, the superior people, they will make you outcasts from the synagogue. But an hour is coming for everyone who kills you to think that he is offering service to God. I've lived long enough and I've been around enough Christians to know that they gossip, they lie, they slander, and they justify themselves and thinking they're really serving God, and they're curbing evil, and they're taking these great stands. But it's just simply not true, and everybody should be more self-aware than that, right? Be vindictive and malicious. There's just never any kind of justification for that. In fact, it's so sobering, right? The cup of water won't lose its reward, but somebody who causes somebody to stumble, it's better for them, Jesus said, to have a millstone hung around your neck and be cast into the sea. I mean, it's a picture that we should get a hold of, right? And Romans 11 is talking about a little bit different topic, but it says, behold the kindness and severity of God. There's these extremes of the reward that he gives those who trust and obey, and the the discipline or the damnation that he'll bring upon those who reject his word and are just doing their own thing. So whether it's, again, at an ATM or a jail cell, be aware. Just be aware. It was funny. Just because of how I grew up and you get a little streetwise. When I'm in the jail cell, the one thing I didn't want was anybody behind me, right? It's just, you just play it safe. And so they had, most of the chairs and tables were bolted to the floor. They had a few loose plastic chairs. And so while I'm talking, one of the inmates gets up and he starts walking toward me. And then, so I kind of like lean and let him go. And he walks right by me and he grabs a chair. And I'm watching him and he goes, is it okay? I said, it's okay as long as you don't stay behind me, right? And everybody started laughing. And so you just, again, you're aware of moments, lighten the mood, speak encouragement, but just try to do some good. Try to show that you care. Try to show that you're aware of, hey, life can be really, 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 every one of those guys that was in that jail cell, on one level, that I talked to, had interaction with, it seemed to me they were all fully aware of, I'm in here because of me. It's my fault, right? And I think it means a lot to them when they know you know that, but you're not sitting there in a condescending, judgmental sort of way. You're there to be an encouragement. And one of the inmates, they all wearing orange jumpsuits, right? And he was talking about his frustrations. And he said, I promised myself I'd never wear this color again. And I said, well, how's that working for you? And they all start laughing because it didn't work at all. He's still sitting right there in his orange jumpsuit. And I said, what did you learn from that? And he's looking like he has no idea. And I said, listen, don't make yourself promises. Your promises aren't that great, right? We've all made promises, New Year's resolutions. We all break them, stumble, and fall in many ways. I said, what you should do is get yourself a Bible and figure out what God has promised you and what God has promised to them that believe, and embrace those things, and that you may never wear that color again. But making yourself the promises, gritting your teeth and trying harder, that's not how we live a victorious life. We walk by faith. We entrust ourselves to God through faith in Jesus Christ. And then we just keep plugging away day by day and week by week and year by year until we get home. So do some good. It's pretty easy to do good. Just look around and see the needs and be cultivating grace. And then when you do some good, remember, give glory where it's due. Not unto us, O Lord, not unto us, but to thy name give glory. Thank you for equipping me by your grace to do some good for your glory. That's a life that's worth living. Amen. So be encouraged to do some good, and then do whatever you can do to keep from causing people to stumble, especially by how you use your mouth, right? Let the words of your mouth and the meditation of your heart be acceptable in his sight. He's our rock, he's our redeemer, and he is worthy of such praise and service. As always, I'm praying for my listeners. I'm praying for my supporters. I'm praying that people will find the grace of God to be sufficient in their life, that God would meet their needs, whatever those needs might be. And I would love to hear from you. I'm going to try to build a private chat room with everybody who watches or supports, where you can go and drop a note, ask for prayer and different things like that. But I need to know who might be interested. So 1136ministries@gmail.com. Please let me know if there's a topic you want me to cover. Same address, 1136ministries@gmail.com. Anything I can pray about, help you with, I'll be there giving that cup of water if I can. And then we'll all give God the glory he so richly deserves. So you have a great day, and by God's grace, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.